Sal Capaccio now on the Wester Hotline. He never misses anything Yankees. So I'm guessing you were there for the whole thing last night. Just a guess.
No, I checked in on it last night. I was down in Olean last night. I was at the Coaches versus Cancer dinner on Sunday. I'm the MC for that. Played golf on Monday, and then we had another awards and hors d'oeuvres and things like that last night, little dinner as well. So I actually listened to a lot of the game on the radio on my drive home from Olean last night, and I heard a couple of home runs, so that was cool.
It wasn't on at this benefit? The Yankee game wasn't shown in the banquet hall? Okay, I guess that's reasonable.
No, it was at a country club in the dining area of the country club.
I see.
No, it was not being shown right there.
Well, it's not a first that here we are at 4 o'clock on cutdown day when the deadline's 4 o'clock and we don't really know yet. Could happen that it gets popped right when we're talking. What do you make of what we do know?
I think that, going through, I'm trying to keep track of everything. And honestly, Mike, as we sit here, like, things could happen, right? And we have to talk about it, and I'll let you know. But as I'm kind of piecing through this, looks like there's only maybe 7 spots or so that need to be filled by the Bills. So we'll see where that goes. And I'm reading Joe Biscaglia now. He just tweeted that Tylon Grable is going to be on IR to begin the season. So that means, that's that spot. I thought that would be Cedric Van Pran Granger on PUP. Did not count him on IR. So that will be a kind of a 1-for-1 for me. So I don't really have to go too deep into what I thought about the O-line. I had a 53-man projected roster, and so far that's really the only thing that's changed is I had Cedric Van Pran Granger going on to PUP, but it looks like Tylon Grable will go on to the IR instead of that being happening. So that means the Bills will start with 9 O-linemen, which is kind of their norm on what they do. And what I make of what's happened so far has been basically kind of expected. I guess that's the word I would use.
Mm-hmm. Let's hit a couple of these guys that have been reported released. Ciarlo, the linebacker. Mm-hmm. You were, positive about him, I would say. I think anyway, listening to you talk over the span of camp. But was he always a long shot?
Yeah, but he really didn't show up to camp until pretty late, like right before the Giants game, I think, is when he played. I was positive on the way he played, but I've definitely never suggested he would make the 53. Okay. In fact, I've said pretty much this is the perfect guy to put on the practice squad. He's a guy that's going to do exactly what you tell him to do and coach him to do. He's an Army West Point graduate. I love that. He's going to be disciplined and understand how to be coached. He's going to want to be a team player all the way. There's just never a spot for him. Never. Okay. Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Dorian Williams, Joe Andreessen, Shaq Thompson. Could never see him cracking the linebacker lineup. The only way you could make a case for him would be to play primary special teams, but even then, I think there's just too many other guys that you'd have to have around the roster. So I like Jimmy Ciarlo and his chances to be on the practice squad, and then who knows, maybe through the year you get an elevation for hard work and having a spot, and you get a nice little game check, but never a guy that I thought would crack the 53.
One guy that, not exactly the opposite, but I remember Bulldog last week putting up that we really haven't talked about this player at all, is Darrick Forrest. Veteran safety who had been with Washington. Reportedly, he's on his way out, too. Does that really surprise you?
No, didn't have him on my 53, but I would tell you that if we did this exercise back in May, I might have had him because I thought that they signed him to be a guy on the team. And then Damar Hamlin comes along, and you think, okay, well, they kind of did that, and it was okay last year. He started, but you need better. Well, I think it's trending towards really the Bills keeping 4 safeties, 5 if you count Cam Lewis. Or Jordan Hancock, however you want to do it. But Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop, Damar Hamlin, and then Jordan Hancock and Cam Lewis can both be safety and nickel. So I think that's, you always had one spot that was going to not be there. To me, it was pretty much between Forrest and Hamlin the entire training camp. And from everything that I've seen, it's always been kind of Damar Hamlin over him.
Okay. Receivers, KJ Hamler, Laviska Shenault. Shenault was getting plenty of work in the return game, but reportedly, again, both guys are on the way out. Thoughts?
Yeah, and listen, Mike, I think that when we talk about return game, it's always a discussion. I think you have to parse kick return and punt return, right? They're not the same thing. They're 2 different skill sets, and they're 2 different things that the Bills think about and want guys for. Now, since the beginning, we've said, and I've made the point many times, Laviska Shenault has never returned a single punt in the NFL or in college in a regular season game. He does have an actual punt return to his credit for a touchdown in college because he picked up a teammate's fumble and he ran it in.
Yep.
But he has never actually caught and fielded a punt in an NFL or college game. They did it with him one time during a Bills preseason game. It was never, to me, looking like he was going to be a guy that they would put back there. Why? Because The Bills want to have a guy back there that they can trust and they can rely on to make good decisions, and that was always Brandon Codrington to me, unless someone else could really just kind of blow them away. The only options to me would not be Shenault. It would be either Elijah Moore or KJ Hamler. Even Curtis Samuel actually did it in college a little bit. But, even those guys, it was never, they would have to really outrank Codrington. And no one on this roster ever outranked Codrington for me as far as a return man. Kick returns is different. That is Shenault's specialty. He can do that. It's also something that Brandon Codrington can do very well, actually. Had some good numbers last year. It's also something they have Ty Johnson for, and they have Ray Davis for. So the only way Shenault was ever going to make this team, there were two ways, really. Number one was, oh my God, he's so unbelievable at kick returns. We just cannot not have him on the roster. He's got to be able to do that for us. Or, boy, he can really help us on offense. So, you know what? Let's keep him on the team because he can also then help us at kick return. And those two things just never materialized for him. So maybe you get him back in the practice squad. We'll see where it goes. And maybe you have a guy that you can use in a pinch on offense and as a kick returner on game day if something were to happen to somebody who you earmarked for that spot.
Looks like, by the way, that Shawn Dolac from UB made the Rams.
Yeah, I love it. Love it for him. And look, I know people are very up in arms about it. I hear from Bills fans all the time. Can't believe the Bills blew it. They should have drafted Shawn Dolac. Well, he went 7 rounds, 32 teams. No one drafted him. So you could definitely say a lot of teams, every team missed on him, including the Rams, by the way, who then did sign him. I will tell you from what I know, the Bills, they looked into him as an undrafted free agent. He looked into the Bills. But when you're in that position, you have options. And from my understanding is Shawn Dolac felt he had a better path to make the roster with a team like LA than Buffalo. And I think he chose right because of this. I still wonder, Mike, if he would have made the team in Buffalo, considering. Now, maybe as a special teamer, and I just don't think he would have beat out Joe Andreessen. Don't think he would have beaten out any of the top 3 guys, Bernard, Milano, and Williams, obviously. And I believe Shaq Thompson was brought here for a specific role and specific reason, to play in base sets, to be a big nickel back. So that's 5 linebackers. Where would Shawn Dolac have fit? He could have been kept as a 6th developmental linebacker on the practice squad, and that's great and good for him. I just don't I just don't think it's some indictment on the Bills or Brandon Beane for not bringing in Shawn Dolac, considering looking what their linebacking core looks like right now.
With Sal Capaccio, it's cutdown day. We don't, as we speak here, just about 10 minutes after 4, have the official list. Joe Buscaglia tweets that Shavers made it. He's got a source reporting that. Did you get to a point where you thought that was pretty, not automatic or likely or what?
I have him on my 53, yes. So my 53-man roster included Tyrell Shavers, the one I did on Sunday morning, which I retweeted out today and adhered to and said there's nothing that they've done that's changed my mind. I have Shakir, Coleman, Palmer, Samuel, Moore, and Shavers as the wide receivers. I think that's exactly what's going to wind up happening here. Feels like now with Shenault, we know that KJ Hamler's gone. I don't think they're keeping Christian Wilkerson and Deion Kane. I haven't seen anything on them specifically, but maybe it's already been out there. We'll see. So, yeah, I think Tyrell Shavers was always right at that cut line for me. What it always came down to for me was not can he play special teams, would he be able to do enough and physically hold up on special teams? Could they trust him enough to put him on the field on special teams? If you're going to be the 6th wide receiver on an NFL team, you have to play special teams. Otherwise, there's no justification for you being on the team. And to me, that was always Tyrell Shavers, what he had to show. He played 50%, 12 out of 24 special teams snaps on Saturday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Those are crucial 12 snaps for him to try and make the roster, and it appears as though that's the case.
Yeah. It's a good story. What now, Sal? So he makes that receiver room, which has been, I don't need to tell you, questioned in the past as a group. Does Shavers end up, or even right away, in your mind, play any kind of a significant role? Is he in uniform week 1? What will they want from him, other than what you've said already?
Yeah, I don't even know if he gets a game day jersey, to be honest, Mike, right? There's 53 guys on the roster. You dress 48 on game day, as long as you have 8 offensive linemen, which they'll do. So that means there's 5 guys who don't get a jersey. I think Tyrell Shavers could be a guy that doesn't get a jersey. And if he is getting a jersey, then he's going to have to be a gunner. He's going to have to be a guy that blocks on kickoffs and kick returns and things like that. So that's his role. And then maybe you give him a play or two on offense and you have something built in for him specifically. At this point, it would be hard for me to see him, out-snapping Curtis Samuel or Elijah Moore. But with the injuries that Samuel's had, with the unavailability, you never know. Maybe you get to a point where over the next couple of weeks, he's not necessarily on the field, practicing enough, and you feel like Tyrell Shavers gives you a better opportunity to have a guy that you're going to rely on and be available, and maybe he does start eating into some of those offensive snaps.
Got to be impressed with, I say this, the moments he had in the preseason, at least, Shavers.
Oh, yeah. Mike, he had a great catch, obviously, on Saturday night. I got to tell you a funny story. On Thursday, we were out at the stadium for practice. It was the team decided to practice inside the stadium, and one of the reasons why they wanted to give the starters a full kind of practice because they weren't going to get the game, right? So give them a game environment type of practice, like an inter-squad scrimmage sort of, offense against defense. So it was in the stadium, that kind of deal. But they went through their normal routine of practicing, and they're doing throws. Josh Allen and the quarterbacks are throwing to the receivers in the end zone, and there's some fade balls that are coming. They're just working on the fade. And I'm walking, and you know how the stadium is set up, where you're really close to the wall down there in the corner, right?
Yeah.
Well, we were in the stands, but the wall is real close to the end zone. So Tyrell Shavers up. I grabbed my phone. And I'm like, I'm going to record some of this because it was still during the shooting period, and I just didn't grab it in time. And Tyrell Shavers made an unbelievable one-handed catch to the other side with his right hand, like the other end zone that he was last week. Mm-hmm. And he made it, and he got both feet down, and he caught it, and he ran right to the wall, and he stopped because the wall is so close. And it was like right in front of me. And I go, wow, nice catch. And he said, thank you. And he went back, and I'm thinking, man, I can't believe I didn't get that on video. And then he went out and did it on Saturday night, right? And you're like, Oh my God, now everybody sees him do it. And I told him after practice, or after the game, I said, I can't believe I didn't get that catch on video, but you did it out here, and you showed everybody what you could do. Do you think you did enough to make the 53-man roster? And his response was interesting. He said, I do, but I thought that last year. And he didn't make it last year. And I thought that was interesting.
We have a clip I've heard played today where he talks about that he's put on 10 pounds. Mm-hmm. Like that's been part of this story, that he's bigger.
He is a little bit bigger, I would say. But, I mean, I can't. Yeah, he said 10 pounds. But when you're already an NFL player at that size, it's a little tough to see sometimes. Sure. These guys, the way that they're built and the way they put on muscle mass and things like that. But I would say, that's probably right. He was a skinnier guy. He's still pretty skinny when he came in the league. But I would say I would notice that he's a little bit bigger. I'll tell you this. For the first time, actually, something I noticed was last week, maybe in Chicago. I can't remember what it was. And I happened to be on the field standing next to Dalton Kincaid, and I thought to myself, I actually do think, I think he's gotten bigger. I didn't kind of notice that a little bit as we went through training camp, but I do think he's gotten a little bit bigger.
Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off today. We don't have the full list of Bills cuts, but several have been announced. Has there been no update on Trey White since we last spoke?
No update on Tredavious White, and my guess is that means that he's going to be on the 53-man active roster, not on IR to return or anything like that, which is really good news because, like I said, with the reports coming in about Tylon Grable going on IR to return, I'm also expecting Max Hairston, it's not official yet, to go on to IR to return. You only get two of those guys that are able to come off when you do it today. Then you don't have to put them on the 53. You do it today. They have to sit out 4 weeks, then they can come back. Well, that wouldn't include Tredavious White. And the fact that they released Dane Jackson, we know that from reports from earlier, just kind of really trends well for me for Tredavious White. What we don't know, Mike, is how significant still would he be injured as far as missing any time coming up here, right? Even if it's not long-term, what term is it? Is it 1 week? Is it 2 weeks? Is he available for the Baltimore Ravens? Is he not? I think that still has to be answered.
Sure. Rasul Douglas to Miami, right? That's interesting. They needed a cornerback badly.
They did. Rasul was a free agent for this whole offseason, and he made a few visits, including one to Miami. And I don't really know, what held that up, him not signing. My guess is he wanted a little more money than people wanted to give him. And, the Miami Dolphins are in a team they're really banged up right now in their secondary. They've had some injuries. So they go back, they reach out, they get Rasul. I think they pay him $3 million. Is from, I think, what I read earlier today. Rasul was amazing when he came to Buffalo after that trade, as we know. He didn't have a great year last year. He was a guy that we were just waiting for that pick. We were waiting for that game-changing play, and it never came. He wasn't terrible, but I think the expectations were so high after that first half season he was in Buffalo that, it was coupled with the fact that he was okay, with the fact that he was so good the year before that it kind of soured even a little bit more, I think, of like what he was last year. But certainly a name that a lot of people brought up here after Tredavious White's injury, if the Bills would reach out to. And I would say that is the kind of player that, hey, he knows the system. You could bring him in. He could probably play for you in a pinch because you don't have to onboard him as quickly. But good to see him, get a job and be back in the league. I'm sure that's great for him.
I would say, not that it's much different than what you said, he's somebody that you need plays from. That was kind of his brand, right? Douglas, coming from Green Bay, he might be a little bit of a gambler, but it's going to pay off for you sometimes. You don't get, he had no interception. I think 5 official passes defensed. Just nothing really came from it. And I think if that, I don't know what his PFF grade was as we speak, but I think you kind of need that from a player like that.
Yeah, right. The Bills, what's interesting is, did Rasul Douglas even have 1 interception last year? I don't think he did, right?
No.
And this is from a team that led the league in takeaways.
Right.
Right? A lot of their takeaways came from linebackers, and the corners didn't have a ton. The safeties had some. Taylor Rapp, right? DeMar Hamlin had a couple. Safeties, the linebackers had some. They punched balls out. There were fumbles. There were just, luck fumbles, things like that, on the offensive line and defensive line as well. But it is interesting that of all those takeaways they had last year, and Rasul Douglas didn't have one.
Right. No Bills player had more than 2. We had 7 guys last year, including Austin Johnson, who had 2 picks for the Bills. A few more minutes left here with Sal. There's probably not one answer to this, but how is it that we go past 4 o'clock year after year and don't have the list?
Well, I think that every team does it differently, first of all. Last year, we got the Bills' official announcement at 5:16 p.m. The year before that was 6:01 p.m. I would say, Mike, it's a little bit like hockey to me, where
the deadline, trade deadline.
You file everything with the league, and then when it's all kind of approved or whatever, however the process is, you put it out. And I would tell you that my guess is, looking at some of the other teams around the league, some PR departments just decide, hey, this is what we did, and let everybody know. It feels like the Bills are the type of organization that says, let's just make sure everything goes through. We're all good here. We can be buttoned up, and then we'll let everybody know. And it feels like that's kind of what's happening.
It's possible, I guess I want to say, I know we've already talked about Trey White, but you might be waiting not past 4, but you might be waiting into the day to make a final judgment on him, which can affect something else that you do with the roster. It doesn't even have to be him, of course. It could be anybody that's kind of on the cusp. But when you see these lists team to team, they almost always include a couple of names that are either IR, designated to return, or not, waived, injured. Different designations can maybe complicate things.
Yeah, for sure. And I tried to, this morning on the Extra Point Show, I really tried to go through all of those things, but it gets complicated, and there's a lot of terms. I think one of the big things you have to remember is the difference between active and reserve. Those are the 2 words that really matter. Active is the 53-man roster. Active, that's what people are. When you go on a reserve list, reserve pup means you don't count because you're on reserve. And I know it sounds funny to say, but to me it's like putting something on layaway. That's what it really is, right?
Oh.
You're over there. You're not. Yeah, you're paying for it, and it's over there, but you don't really get it until you need it, until you can bring it onto your roster and put it in your home, whatever it is. So that's what that term means. So when you have injured reserve, reserve pup, reserve suspended, that's the difference between active roster, 53 guys on the active roster count, and then you have 16 practice squad players who are not on the active roster, a 17th with an international designation. All that stuff with Jordan Phillips unfolded yesterday, and I know that you weren't on, but I don't know if you saw how that was unfolding yesterday and everything that went down, but we can go through that real quick. What happened was, this is all procedural stuff, right? Which is, we found out the Bills were going to sign Jordan Phillips at defensive tackle. And the initial reporting was he's signing on the 53-man roster. And everybody, including myself, thought, okay, what does that mean? Is Dwayne Carter out? Is Daquan Jones out? Is Larry Ogunjobi out, even though you don't need his roster spot? Like, what's happening here? While later, I found out, the information I got was, hold on, he's signing to the 90-man roster, but he's going to be released, and then he will be on the practice squad. And the reason is because they had space on the 90-man roster. Get him in the building now. Get him into the weight room, get him in with the trainers, get him into his coaches' meetings, his team meetings, all that. That way they can do it a day and a half early, and then they still will do the procedural of getting him off the roster and then back on the practice squad so he doesn't miss a beat.
Okay, so we still have to wait on the official list. I might buzz you again if that's possible, if that's okay with you.
Sure. I'll be around. Let me know.
Thanks, Al.
You got it.